Welcome to the Help Me Abide podcast, a program dedicated to helping you have a closer walk with God by sharing biblical truths and relatable testimonies of women who have overcome. Whether you're a seasoned believer or just starting your spiritual journey, this podcast has something for you. Each episode will supply encouragement and wise, practical advice to inspire and challenge you to abide in the one who has all the answers to life's questions. A woman who abides in the shadow of the Almighty is a woman who lives safe and secure. Sit back and enjoy a few minutes of positive conversation with your host, Jennifer Beal, and friends.
Help me abide in the one who has the power. Help me abide each day and every hour. Remind me that without you, my efforts are in vain, so that others will see you. Help me abide.
Welcome to the Help Me Abide podcast. Today's episode, we are excited to have my friend Kella Wynne as our guest for our first bonus episode. Kella is a dedicated missionary who has given her life to serving the people of Mexico. She has been living on the mission field for over 9 years, working tirelessly to proclaim the gospel to the Mexican people. Her husband has started a church in Ensenada 6 years ago. Their church has seen tens of thousands of people saved. Kella is my friend. I love her snort-filled laugh, her evident care for her children, and her willingness to die to herself daily so that she could live for Christ. Her favorite food in Mexico is ceviche. Join us as we learn more about her inspiring journey and the incredible work she is doing to help those in need of Jesus. Hello, listeners. I'm pumped to introduce you to Kella Wynne, missionary to Ensenada, Mexico. Kella, welcome to the Help Me Abide podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Kella is my very good friend. I love her ever since I met her. You came to a missions conference and I met you, and she shared a little bit of her testimony in the youth group, and I said, I love that girl. She made me laugh, and she inspired me just through her little, I don't know, it wasn't very long, maybe 10-minute testimony that she gave there. Mm-hmm. Then we went down to Ensenada, Mexico, and their ministry in Mexico is amazing. We brought our youth group down there, and if I could describe their church in one word, I would say they are a soul-winning church. First day that we were there, her husband, Joe, what did people call him? Pastor Wynne?
Pastor Joe? Pastor, yeah.
Pastor Joe went through all of the congregation and asked them how many souls they had won that week. And all of us are sitting there. We had just gotten there. And many of us said 0. And we were like crawling underneath our seats because there were people there who had won 10 people. I think there was a lady who won 40 people that week. And it just lit a fire under us to make sure that we did not leave there without people saved. So your church has made a big impression on our teens. They still talk about Ensenada. So thank you for your influence. Kella also has the best hair. You should follow her on all of her social medias because this girl, I'm looking at her right now, has the best hair.
Oh my goodness, Miss Jen.
All right. So let's get into this interview. Okay. Kella, describe what your childhood was like.
Well, I was born and raised in West Virginia and in just a small farm there out in the country. My town has about 3,000 people in it. The whole thing. We grew up in a trailer, and we lived about 2 minutes from a Baptist church. As soon as my mom got pregnant with my brother, she started attending a Baptist church and got saved and baptized, and was really helped out a lot by my great grandmother, who was a Christian. And like I said, my family didn't start the best way. My parents, how they met. My mother's only 16 when she got married, and so. But my great-grandmother really just took her in and tried to help her. She took us to church every week. And then we ended up moving out to our farm where my parents still live. And anyways, and my mom kept taking us to church. Just at a church closer by, about 2 minutes, literally 2 minutes from our house. And we went there every Sunday. My dad didn't go very much. He would say, I have the Bible, I don't have to go to church, but he liked us going. He thought that was a good idea. I don't know if he just wanted the morning off, but he really liked sending us. He owned there's one bar in town and he owned it. So everyone knew who we were because of that. And so the church knew, who we were. So they were always very kind to us. We were considered poor. I never thought we were poor, but apparently they felt really bad for us. And they would every Christmas they would bring us gifts, they would bring us food every Thanksgiving. And my dad thought that was really Christian of them. He would say, that's very Christian because I don't send them any money. He said, I don't give them money. I don't even go to their church. So he was very impressed with that. And then we were having a revival meeting, which we didn't normally, my mother worked full time, so we didn't normally go to church midweek, but for whatever reason we were. And we were on our way, and my brother was telling us in the car about how to get saved and how to go to heaven. And I mean, I had been in church. I was only 7, but I mean, I'd gone to church everything. I was like, wait a minute, what do you mean going to hell? What are you talking about? Like, it really just shook me. And that was the first time I remember understanding. He was like, well, you have to do this, and this is why, and we're all sinners, and you have to get saved. And I was, whoa, I love Jesus. I don't know what's happening. He's like, well, you have to get saved. You have to ask Jesus in your heart. He said, I'm going to go up after church tonight and do it, which I'm assuming he had already probably gotten saved. Someone had talked to him, but he was going forward to make a public profession.
Wow.
And so me and my sister were sitting there like terrified the whole church service because we were like, we got to make it. We got to go up there. We got to go with him, because it was the first time we understood what hell was and salvation. I feel like it was the first time it made sense to us. My sister was 10 and my brother was 13. And so right at the end of church, that's pastor's like, if anyone has any decisions they want to make, there was like 12 people in the building. I could not leave the seat. I was so scared. I had a lot of anxiety as a kid. And finally I see my sister going, come on, get up here, come on. And he was like, we already talked about this. We're going to do this tonight. And so I went up there and we all got saved that night. And then we had to wait for the river to thaw out so we could get baptized. We didn't have baptistries out there. Everyone got baptized in the river as soon as it thawed in June. So it was like the date, everybody. So we told our dad about it, and he came and he said, I'll come see you guys get baptized. And he came to watch us get baptized, and he got saved that day at church. And then he got baptized with us. So all of us in the river that day. And then from then on, things, of course, were different. Once the dad starts going to church, we didn't miss. We went every service. And then we got a new pastor that started preaching soul winning, tithing, bus routes. And my dad was just all in. And anyway, so from then on, that was when we were in church all the time. Sadly, though, they're baby Christians. So there were some issues when I turned about a teenager where my parents, they stopped going to that church. So we went from doing like everything to like, my dad would preach in the nursing homes. We had a bus route, a trailer park route. My dad was in charge of the teenagers. I have no idea why. They were just desperate. And we would go to the public schools, me and my dad, and then we just stopped everything. And mainly because of spiritual immaturity. So of course, and I was like 13. So it was perfect timing for me to just, I didn't want to go anymore because my dad would take us to new church every week, and I didn't like the kids or something. So I said, can I just stay home? And they'd say, okay, well, you can stay. So anyways, I kind of drifted from the Lord. My sister went off the deep end. My brother stayed in the church where we grew up and said, because he was dating a girl there, and he said, I'm going to stay, but he was already a grown up. So my dad said, well, yeah, man, do what you want. And he was the youth pastor there until just recently. Anyways, I kind of drifted from the Lord in that time, very rebellious. And I feel like it was God's mercy. He definitely kept watching over me in those years. I have mistakes that I could have made. And when I look back, I'm like, how did I not make a terrible decision? But my parents prayed for me, and they sent me out to live with my aunt for the summer. I just wanted to make money. They said, you'll make enough money to buy a car. So I went to make money for a car, and there was nothing else to do except for go to church. And I would see the teenagers there and the girls there. First I saw them, I thought, they're so dorky. Look at them saying, ma'am, what a bunch of, nerds. But then I said, but look at their eyes. They're so happy. And I was so miserable. And I was like, they don't even do what they want to do, but look how happy they are. And I remember I felt like this Holy Spirit just told me, well, you could have that. They don't have anything you don't have. You just don't listen. And I would cry every night that summer, every night, because I just felt so guilty. I felt like I was just convicting me. And so I finally just said, I'm so sorry, Lord, you're right. I don't need to do this anymore. This is silly. I don't know why I'm living in such rebellion. And so I surrendered my life to the Lord, rededicated my life that summer. And I remember I came back on an airplane, first time on an airplane. And my parents, as soon as they saw me, they just started like weeping. And I remember I was like, whoa. And they were like, look at her face. Just look at her face. They could just, huge difference in me.
Wow.
So like you said, I don't know how that goes with like conversion, but like I said, I felt like that was the first time I really wanted to live for the Lord. And I was studying to be an art major. I had an art portfolio. I was going to go to Pittsburgh and go to art school and leave my parents and never have to be told what to do again. I was very feminist, and I didn't want to do that anymore. I just stopped completely, and then I didn't know where to go to. My dad said, "Well, it sounds like you want to serve the Lord full time." I said, "I don't know where to go." He said, "Well, there's some church in Indiana. They do stuff." That's what he said.
They do stuff.
He said one time, he said, because he was a truck driver, he said, I drove through and I heard it on the radio. He said, they do conferences and stuff. He said, Jack
Wow.
Hyles. And of course, I didn't even know Jack Hyles had died at that point. I literally got there and was like, which one's Jack Hyles? Everyone's like, what? I
Wow.
was like, no idea. Anyways, I got there. They let me in. I thought that was amazing. You know, I had really low grades because I was a rebellious punk, but they let me in and I went and, like, so there's whole stories there. And then I went straight to the bus route. And my first weekend in Chicago, I met my husband. He was my bus captain. And he ignored me. But I guess I liked that or something. I don't know. I just kept trying to make him happy all the time because I felt like he was always mad at us, which he was always mad at us. We're not improving anybody. But
Great story. So tell us how you and Joe started talking
okay.
or cultivating that relationship.
Yeah. Well, like I said, yeah, he would in the bus routes, like I said, he only was friendly with one or two of the lady workers who he worked with for a long time. But he expected a lot of us. And later I would learn that other ladies were like, oh yeah, you don't want to be on his right. He expects the ladies to work. And I was like, well, shouldn't we be working? They're like, that's the man's job. We're just here to get married, they would tell me. And I was like,
Oh,
well,
that's
I
funny.
don't think it's hard. I don't think, of course, it was hard because we were in little Mexico was like our bus route. I spoke no Spanish. I had never seen a Hispanic person before I went to Chicago. I had no idea how to talk Spanish, and we would just get dropped off and walk around for 4 hours because he wouldn't give us. He would say, "You need your own contacts." So, like I said, we had to find people who would let us hang out in their house. Anyways, and we worked hard, and I remember he would drop you off on the corner in the snow. And if he came back around and saw you didn't have anyone with you, he'd just keep circling and he'd pick you up last.
Oh man, he is intense. So for those of you who don't know, her husband Joe Wynne grew up on the mission field in Mexico. So he grew up under his dad's ministry, who has this, amazing ministry in Mexico City. And then he came to Hiles. He came to Hiles older, Kella?
Yeah, when he was 20.
So he was like already trained for ministry.
Yeah. Basically, yes. And also his mother, he grew up, his mother and his father both had bus routes and they'd compete at church. And his mother, she can still bring people. She could fill
Yeah.
up a car right now if she
Yeah.
wanted. She's really good at bringing people. And
Which is
yeah,
amazing.
she's a great soul winner. And so he is very, now he goes now when we go home to visit, he's in competition with her. How many
that's
people he can
funny.
bring.
Just to bring it back, he's going to Bible college thinking, oh, we're training for ministry. Yeah. And he's thinking, wait, these people are here and they don't even want to do anything. Yeah. So from his perspective, he didn't understand,
right, exactly.
This is what I've done all my life.
Right, exactly. And then I didn't understand. I went to Bible college and I remember my daddy telling me, he's like, Kella, if you pick the worst man out there, you're still doing 10 times better than anyone back home. That was his dating advice to me. I was like,
thanks, Dad.
He's like, if you marry some coal miner back home, he's probably going to beat you up or get drunk on the weekend. So just pick any of them. You'll be fine. Wow. That's what he told me. Just go. Don't call me.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you'll be okay. And so, like you said, so I kind of felt like I was there to work. I did not feel like most of the girls did. I felt like I didn't deserve to be there. I had never read through my Bible completely. Like it was all very new to me. And so I felt like if anyone should be working, it should be me. I should be, because God's been so good to me. And I've just spent so many years just pushing him aside. And I would tell girls I wanted to marry a pastor and or missionary, because I learned what missionaries were when I was a kid once at camp. They sent us to a Christian camp, and I said, do you know that missionaries are like what we do, but somewhere else? I said, I would love to do that. I would love to travel and see the world. And I always just had this sense, though I love my farm so much, I just knew in my heart I wasn't going to be there. And my dad would tell me, he said, you're not going to be here. Yeah. You're going to get older. You're going to go away. He just knew. And I'm the only one of the kids that did move away. I just kind of knew in my heart too, I just wasn't going to be there. Even though my heart is there too. Anyways, but yeah, so I felt like I wanted to serve the most. And, in Bible college, girls make a list of who they want to, like what your husband's. Well, I remember girls, I would hear them pray at night because, you do devotion.
Yeah.
They'd be like, they'd be like, let him have blonde hair, be 6'1", and I'd be like, what is happening? And then I'm following my dad's advice, Kella, any of them is bad, and so just lower your standard, Kella. So I'm just like, these people are messed up. So I said, well, I'm not going to do that, Lord, because I can't be that picky. I am not one of these good girls. So I said, but if he could be a missionary and he could sing, I would love that. That's what I said. And then turns out I didn't even know my husband was a missionary. Eventually, they told me well, his dad's got a big church in Mexico. And I was like, oh, I never heard of it. and then they were like, yeah, he's from Mexico. That's why they always send all the Mexicans to his route, because they don't speak English. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I remember on the first, anyways, about 2 years later or a year later after we met, so we worked together on the route, and he basically pretended I didn't exist. And and then when I had broken up with my then boyfriend, my first boyfriend ever, we had broken up, and I was devastated, crying everywhere all the time. And he saw me crying, and he knew the boy because he kicked him off his route for being a lazy bum. And I had just happened to be breaking up with him at the same time. So anyways, and he came up and he said, why are you crying? And I was just like crying like a girl, like a baby girl. And I was like, nothing,
Right.
And he was like, he said, you're way too pretty to be crying. And I was just like, what? Like my face, I was like, what? I mean, he had never spoken to me other than, Miss Kella, can you get the kid? Miss Kella, so-and-so needs to go to the bathroom. That was like all, and then he just switched modes right there. Like, just,
wow.
And so he said, from then on, I was just like, okay. And he's like, can I go get you something to eat? Let's go get something to eat. And I was just like, okay, Brother Joe. And I didn't know what else to say. And then we started just spending time together and stuff. And I was like, but again, I was emotional and vulnerable. Basically, he took advantage of my vulnerability. I'm just kidding. Okay. I'm kidding. But it was a vulnerable time for me. And I was really questioning. Like I had literally prayed that night, Lord, I just won't get married. It's okay. I'll just go serve on the cornfield. It's okay. I don't know what these Christian boys are doing here, but they're messing with my heart. I was just not ready for it. So, and then God brought the very next day after I prayed that, Miss Jen, my husband came up and said, hey, I'd like to take you on a date. I was like, wow. What? And he's like, but like a real date, like not like captain and worker, like a real date, like a boy-girl date. And I was like, okay. So I don't know what to do. And then that night after our first date, he sang to me a love song in Spanish in front of the
wowza.
And I was, of course, dying like red. And I was like, please stop doing that, please. And I was like, and I was like, and he was like, oh, sorry. He was like, full on Mexican, I'm ready to marry you. And then he did.
Swooning you.
He gave me a bear at that same time and said, I don't know.
First date.
Yeah, first date. And said, I'm ready. I know you've got you got a pastor's wife's heart. That's what he would always say. And I'm going to be a pastor. I'm going to be a missionary. And, I'll marry you. Like, I'm ready. I'm just letting you know that that's where this is going. I know that your other boyfriend was like, oh, I don't know it. I'm letting you know I want to marry you.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, well, good night. And then I just went back to my room. And then I told my friend, I was like, so I just went from broken up to getting asked out by Joanne. And I think he just proposed to me in like 1 week. And I was like, and I just told God I don't want to marry anyone anymore. And he says that he went to his room and called his dad and said, Dad, I found the girl I'm going to marry. How fast can I get married? That's what he said. I didn't even
believable.
Yeah. And his dad said, well, 6 months and 6 months. And so I prayed that night and I was like, Lord, I don't know what's happening. My heart is all messed up. And so I said, Lord, if I was like, look, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do anything about him. I'm not going to text him. I'm not going to look for him. I said, but if it's your will, just keep him around. And the next day outside my dorm at first class, he was waiting right at the end of the hallway and said, hi, can I walk you to class? And I was like, okay. And then the very next class, he was outside all my classes. He had gone to the office and asked him for a copy of my class.
Unbelievable.
Every day, can I sit with you in chapel? You want to get lunch? And I was like, okay. And then he was just always there. And it was 6 months, 1 year to the day he asked me out and we got married.
Unbelievable, Kella.
Don't recommend that for everyone, okay? But we literally followed his pastor's advice.
It worked. I
mean, at the same time, I feel like girls nowadays if you both have the same goals and you both want to serve the Lord full time, I mean, how hard? I mean, marriage is hard. Anything is hard.
Yes.
I think that people make a little bit
complicated. They want the hallmark. Brett says he knew on the first date. Now, he didn't propose to me on the first date,
That's a
but
bold move.
I think we both knew rather quickly. And then it's like, all right, so let's go. So, okay, just back up 1 second. I just have a couple questions just out of
Sorry.
curiosity. So you admired him as a bus captain.
Yes, I did. Yes.
How long did it take for you to be interested in him? Like,
Well, kind of like he says, like you said, immediately he walked different than every other boy
Yeah.
at school. Like he just walked different. He held his head high. He always had this little group of Mexicans following him around. You know, he kind of always looked like a little posse, but just the way he would walk, he would give us like, encouragements on the weekend. And again, I don't know, I was just so sold out on, I wanted to do my best for the Lord. My heart was just so involved that I believed in him. Does that make sense? Like
yeah,
he would have a vision and we would meet it. And I also knew he worked harder than any of the other captains. We knew he stayed late. We knew sometimes he would go like 2 or 3, if it was a big day, he would just fast that whole week. We knew that he would be the last one home. We knew that he would stay all day. We knew that he paid out of his own pocket, like he didn't just encourage us to do hard work. He also worked harder than all of us. And
right.
it was something easy to believe in when there were so many kids who were just like hanging out in their dorms,
Yes.
playing games, or
Right.
you know what I mean? And
He was the real deal. It was obvious.
That's what I felt. I felt like I could get behind him again. But since he was so much older than me, since he's 5 years, I just figured, he was like out of my league. I just thought, well, like you have a crush on the senior. Like, I mean, obviously we all had a crush on him. And yes, ma'am.
Love it.
Hello, Connie Marujo, resource promoter for the Help Me Abide podcast. Today, I am excited to share with you a scripture writing group that will give you the opportunity to deepen your faith while connecting with like-minded individuals. The leader of this group is Audrey Ludwig. She chooses a scripture writing theme for the month and has EN Designs create a beautiful template that includes specific verses to write out each day to keep everyone on the same page. You can print out the plan or save it to your phone. And then there's an option to share a picture of your daily writing over on the @Audrey Ludwig Music Facebook page to be entered into their monthly giveaway. Feel free to jump in now and catch up on the first days of December to join in their December giveaway. Stay on track of your personal scripture writing goals with the help of the group's support and accountability. Don't miss this opportunity to grow in your faith and connect with others who share your love for God's Word. I would encourage you to consider joining Audrey's scripture writing group today.
So in retrospect, Kella, can you see God preparing you in your childhood in any way to be a missionary?
Yeah. I have 2 other sister-in-laws who are also from West Virginia, who married Wynns and live in Mexico. I would say the conditions, the third world condition.
West Virginia is a different country. It is if anybody has been there, it's just different. And you're so normal to me, Kella, but not everyone is.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Exactly. Yeah. I think California is a different country.
You're not wrong.
I constantly tell people in Mexico, I'm from the States, but I'm not from California.
Oh, that's
I'll say that right away. But
this is our mission field. This is our mission field.
I know. I tell them. We just had a family come on vacation. I said, I feel so sorry for you. I was like, thank you for serving the Lord there. I said, I would never live there in 1,000 years.
I know. It's not easy.
It's not easy, especially for a Christian trying to do right. But
right.
There's so much. Yeah, that's a different subject. But yeah, like you said, I would say maybe like just because materialism is not a thing. I mean, you have to drive an hour just to go to a mall that sells off-brand clothes anyways. I mean, like, there's just not that pull, that materialism. There's not a lavish lifestyle. So like you said, I don't know. I wouldn't say like a poverty line, but like what is it called? Like to live, the quality of life is just more simple in general. Like even people who have means, that just means they own more land usually,
Right.
We consider land valuable. I don't know if that makes sense. There just wasn't a big pull for materialism. I didn't know brands and things like that. So I feel like you said, we're very happy living with less, maybe. I feel like just in general, I feel like I was raising me for that. I loved the idea of travel since we never went anywhere ever. And we just, also, looking back, when you see how people live, we had no neighbors, we had no kids to play with. My closest neighbor was like 3 miles away.
Wow.
So we grew up, it was just us, we didn't go out. We didn't have parties. My family didn't really have any friends. We didn't have like close relatives come over. About when I turned 5, most of my relatives had moved away. So we didn't even have big get together. So I don't know if that makes sense, but kind of more like, it sounds sad, but I would say like isolated. Like, we were fine. We were self-sustained. We didn't interact with a lot of other people. I think, and the only downfall was I feel like it made me a little bit emotionally immature because I had never really gone through, I had never really faced betrayal or friendship.
Yeah.
Like my first day of kindergarten, I just told someone the story that I remember someone lied to me and my dad was like, well, honey, she's lying. She's making that up. I was like, what does that mean? Like, I didn't even know what he was talking about. He was like she's saying things that aren't true. And I was like, why would she do that? Like, I was
crushed.
just, and my dad was like, because people do that, like, and even now my husband will be like, well, they're lying, MiKella. And I'm like, why would they, it makes me self-righteous. That's my sin, as I think I would never,
I'm sure you'll gain a lot of those experiences as time goes on. Don't worry. So how did God convince you that serving on the foreign field was his will?
I don't know. Like you said, I always kind of had the desire, and then I prayed about it. And then, like I said, after our first date, I said, wow, check. He's going to be a missionary, because he'd always said, I'm not going to be here forever. I'm going to go to Mexico. I'm going to help my dad. So we didn't know that. And I was like, oh, and check, he can sing.
What a win.
And I was like, thanks, Lord. I'm like, right, that's all I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I should have prayed a little deeper, but I didn't know he'd answer so quick. But anywho, I don't know about that. We never talked about it. Like, ever. We just, that's what we were going to do. I just knew that's where he was going. And as soon as, like I said, about a week into it, I was the same thing. I mean, I was head over heels. He was all I could think about. That was all we could do. That was it. I was sold on him. And I remember one time curiously, I was like, what is Mexico like? And he looked around and he was like, it's kind of like Chicago, just the houses are touched at the sides. It's nothing like Chicago. Like, when I got there, I was like, I cannot believe that that's how you described it. He's like, it's kind of the same.
That is so funny.
And I was like, it is nothing. What?
No, it's not. I could concur with what you're saying.
Out of my ignorance, I was like, oh, really?
That's not too bad.
Okay. Well, I've been in Chicago for 3 years, 2 years. But so I don't know. Like you said, now once we started, once I visited Mexico and once I saw kind of my husband in his element, I immediately thought, wow, this is what he's made to do. Like, I mean, because I thought Chicago, I thought the bus ride. I already admired him and saw how serious he was. And so I didn't mess around. And he told me, he's like, I'm not here. I'm leaving. I got a goal. I'm only here because I haven't got married. And now I got you and we're gone. That's basically what he said. But then, like I said, once we got to Mexico, I just see him and I was like, wow, this is what he's made for. Like, his personality comes out so much more. His preaching is just everything. This is who he was. He had CDs, he did music, he did all these things that a whole nother side of him I had never seen, because it was almost like that was like, this is what he was meant to do. So, like I said, I don't know. I feel like maybe after we visited for a month, I felt that confirmation. Sure. I felt like, wow, yeah, no, this is what he's definitely like. I don't know. He can't do anything else. There are people who say, oh, I could have been a millionaire. I'm like, no. I mean, not that my husband's not capable of being a millionaire or really, really well off or have a business mind. It's just, he can't do anything else. Like, he couldn't. He would just die, because this is what he was made to do.
So it seems to me that once you knew Joe was God's will for your life, then automatically Mexico is God's will for your life, because Joe is Mexico. I mean, it was a package. It was a package deal.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what challenges have you faced living in Mexico?
Oh, yeah. Well, like you said, I don't even know if they would be Mexico challenges, or maybe they were just life. But since I never really, like I said, I went straight from my parents' farm to Mexico, kind of is how I feel like it. So sometimes I wonder if this is just how life is everywhere, or if it's something specifically unique to us. Like you said, I kind of, like I said, I just had not experienced people, like lying, cheating and things like that, but that probably happens everywhere. I just had never experienced it, or people using other people or using me to get their way. But one of the challenges obviously was, when we first got to Mexico City, was I was not from a city, and it's one of the largest cities in the world. No privacy, everyone looking at you, touching my kids' heads, those things. Those are just little things. I mean, it wasn't like I was going to quit the ministry. I just things you have to get used to,
Yes.
I would pick a day an hour of the day to go to the park in our apartment complex because no one else was there. Even the church people, I didn't want anyone because I felt like all they did was stare at us. And I really struggled with anxiety a lot when I was younger. And so I would get like anxious just from people looking at us and in the store or whatever. And then,
Overwhelming.
there were a lot of kidnapping threats and a lot of things happening in the church, like we would preach funerals of kids who had been taken and stuff. So those things, like accepting that as part of your life, that's just like people were in a car wreck. Well, their son was taken, or crazy things, so-and-so was killed on their way to church, like just things they would just talk about like it was happening, and those things. And then, like I said, lack of privileges. Like I said, I was very feminist. I had my own job since I was 14, drove my own car, had my own license, paid my own school bills. Even in college, I had a job and I did all my own stuff. And then to go from no income, I had nothing to do with it. And I couldn't even leave my house without my husband. It's like, is a big shift, and then you're on Facebook and everyone's like, oh, we went to Target, we went to the park today. And I would just be like, I actually started limiting my amount of time on social media because without meaning to, I would feel like I was missing out because of
Sure.
maybe motherhood would be easier if I could just go around the block when I wanted to, or if I could just go to the store because I need eggs. Instead, I got to wait 3 days and then drive. Sometimes it would take us 2 hours to go 7 miles.
Yeah.
And I have babies, and you're like, man, what, 2 hours in the car, so things like that. Those are just like material. I'm trying to think of like material inconveniences,
Sure.
Then obviously the hardest one that I faced was, I had really bad health. I had almost died several times in Mexico City. I thought we had lost Sean many times, so many times. And I remember every time I would be there, I'd be like, he's gone. And I would tell the doctor, like, you don't have to check. He's gone. I know it. They were like, well, let's check. And I'm like, no. He's gone. And I remember even thinking, I should be doing better than this. Like, Kella, you believe in him? Why are you so, I was just
Wow.
so upset. And then he was alive every time. Every time. Finally, my husband's like, when are you going to stop saying that? Would you stop saying that every time we go? He's fine. And he was fine every time. And it was just a total miracle. And again, the doctors say, we don't know why. And one time all the specialists in the hospital got together and told my husband, you need to abort that baby. It's killing her. She's dying. She's bleeding out from the inside.
Wow.
We can't fix her internal bleeding unless we take the baby out. And my husband's like, well, we're not doing that. And he's like, and they even said, do you not know you can get another kid? You can't have another wife. She's going to die if you don't do this. And finally, my doctor said, they ain't going to do it. So stop talking to him. She said, they're really Catholic.
You're really
But she meant this. I think she meant Christian. I don't think she knew what we were at that point.
Yeah,
But,
they knew you were something.
yeah, she was like, they believe in Jesus. They're not going to do that. And she said, but you
Wow.
have to do everything I say. And she did. And she saved my life one time too, because,
Wow.
like the doctor put an IV in and then she got off shift and just left it in me.
Kella, the same thing happened to me. The same thing happened to me. They left the IV in, and all of the IV had gone into my body, but then they didn't take it out. So all of my blood was starting to fill the IV bag.
Oh, that's so rough. I hate IVs.
At that point, it was like, oh, I'd rather die at home. We're just leaving. I would just rather leave.
Right? And you're just like, come on. And we were paying so much money to be there,
Yes.
we were in the nicest hospital because it was the only hospital that had that if he was born early, they could operate on him,
Wow.
And I remember them one time looking at me and saying, if he's born right now, we will do nothing. We will put him on this table where you ate your lunch and you will watch him die.
Oh my goodness.
And I said, well, then that's what we're going to have to do.
Wow.
And I was like, we're not taking him out.
Yeah.
But I remember when that happened. I remember my doctor came in and she's like, immediately she starts yelling at me. She's like, what did you do? Who did this? Get that out of her. Get her to the emergency room. She's yelling. And I was like coming in and out of it. And I just remember when I opened my eyes, it was getting really hard to breathe, and I was like blacking out and like every breath. And I looked over at my husband's face. He was just white.
Oh.
And that's when I knew. I was like, this is bad. And I said, do not give our children to your mother. You will raise them. Do you understand? I was like, you can do this. Do not. And he was like, stop talking like that. Stop talking like that. And he was like, you're going to be fine. But I saw his face was white. And my doctor's face was white. She was scared. But then she was like, do you have any idea how much they could sue you for? She's like, we're going to bankrupt all of you. Get somebody in here. And she literally saved my life. She said, we got to flush her out.
Wow.
And she did. And about like 2 hours later, I woke up in my room and they were like, she's going to be fine. You know, they're
Oh
like,
my goodness,
we're
Kella.
really sorry about that. But like you said, so mainly in those times, like you said, again, where I felt lonely, I felt like my life as a Christian, and I don't know if you feel this way. And I try to tell this to the young people because I feel a lot of women say, oh, I just feel lonely. And I'm like, I kind of think that's how God does it. I feel
Yeah.
like there, you know, like I said, I felt great in deputation. You know, we were around people all the time. They went to Mexico. I didn't speak Spanish. I just had a kid. Like I said, and then I didn't even want to go outside. It wasn't safe. And so I kind of felt secluded again. And then I kind of started finding my place, speaking the language. And then I got sick and had to stay in bed for 6 months, you know, and then, like I said, and then in the hospital, my mother-in-law was basically, I missed my first son's first steps. I mean, all that, because I couldn't do anything. So he said, I just feel like there were times like a cycle of where you feel alone, like separated, like I'm the only one going through this.
Yes.
People don't understand. And I do remember telling the doctor, I said, well, I've got like a church of 15,000 people praying for that baby in there. I said, I think he's going to be fine. I was like,
Yeah.
my father-in-law prays for him and me by name every day. And I said, so I really feel fine about it. And we ended up getting through it. And he was born. He had no problem. We were out in 2 days.
Praise
As
the
soon as
Lord.
he was born, I had no complications.
Amazing.
So he said, and so it was kind of, so he said, maybe more like loneliness.
Yeah.
The devil wants you to feel like you're all alone.
Yeah.
No one understands you.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what you're going through.
Yeah, I could relate to a lot of things that you were saying. In Africa, they call us Brunies, which means white people. And everyone wanted to touch our kids. And it didn't matter how young they were. They wanted to touch the white kid. And sanitation isn't, high on the list of priorities in Africa. And I'm not even a super germ person. Like, I don't care.
Right.
But when everybody's touching the baby, it gets to you a little bit. It just gets to you a little
Yeah,
bit.
it's more like your mother. Like, what are you doing?
The instinct.
Like, that doesn't belong to you.
Yeah,
like, what are you doing?
Get off my baby.
Yeah, that's how.
And then the comparing ourselves among ourselves. I agree with social media. I had to get off social media as well. We're seeing a highlight reel. We're seeing all of the good, but we don't see the lonely days. We don't see they went to Target, how much they spent, how much they're in debt, how this is causing marital problems at home. We just see the highlight reel. So it's dangerous to compare. The Bible says it's not wise to compare ourselves among ourselves. And then you talked about loneliness, and I could echo what you said, that I think God brings us all to a place where we're all alone and all we need is him, regardless of where we are. I've been in California, in the city of thousands and thousands of people, in a great church with great support, and I have felt all alone. No one knows what I'm going through. No one could relate to this, and only God can. So I think he uniquely puts us in situations where we feel that way so that we need him. But we think we're the only ones who feel this aloneness. And I think that that's a trap of the enemy, to make us feel like we're the only ones who feel this.
Right. I agree.
What area of personal growth have you experienced through your service?
I would say emotional maturity. Like I said, my husband has taught me how to be a real Christian, like we had a habit of, again, it might be because of how my parents were raised, but like I said, when someone does wrong, okay, well, we just never speak to them again. Well, you're dead to us now.
You're done.
Oh, it's okay. We're not mad at you, but just never speak to us again,
Ultimate separation.
Yeah, we're done. Yeah, that's done. And it maybe like as a way of self-preservation, and my parents had rough upbringings, I'm not sure, but we kind of adopted that reality. So like you said, as soon as things started happening in our ministry here, where I'm like, oh, that person cheated. Well, they're dead to me now. We're done. Yeah, I'm done. No more. I'm not gonna like spit at you or kick you, but we're done. Like, I can't love you anymore. And I remember I was saying, no, you have to keep going. You have to keep acting the same. And I was like, why? How can I do that? I was like, how can I pretend like nothing happened? He's like, you're not pretending nothing happened. You're loving them in spite of what happened.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
I don't think that works. I was like, and he was like, I think that's what Christians do.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I don't know anything about that.
Like, not easy. It's not easy.
Right. I had to learn how to like accept accept them at what they are. And it's kind of, and then once you have children and they get a little older, you also understand. I mean, you kind of are always practicing that in your marriage. You're practicing that in your children. They do all sorts of wrong, but you don't stop loving them any less.
Right.
You might have words with them. There might be, if it's a child, you might discipline them, or it might be a consequence, but you don't stop loving them. We don't even have to explain it.
Right.
But for some reason, when it comes to other people in church and the Bible does call them brothers and sisters, we're like, no, that's enough. Like, I'm done with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's no more, or like I said, if they do something to your kids, or I'm sure like, or if they do something against my husband, and I'm like, how ungrateful.
Yeah.
Like, do you have any idea what we sacrificed so you could have that?
Right.
So I feel like that like I said, I've had to emotionally, like I said, learn how to love people and forgive them when, like I said, they won't even admit. And sometimes it's years later that I have people say, I lied about that. And I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
I
I've
knew that a
forgiven
long
you.
time ago.
Yeah.
Oh, or yeah, or thank you so much. I really appreciate what you did. It's been really good for us. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Like I've already been there. I've been there. But like I said, helping that spiritual maturity, of that. And like you said, that, and also I've been thinking a lot of, and I've been teaching about the will of God in my Sunday school, and about, sometimes it's just accepting what life is. You won't have a ministry that you thought you would, or a marriage like you thought you would, or your children aren't who you thought they'd be, or your house. And sometimes the will of God is just accept it. And sometimes we fight. We feel so bad for ourselves. Oh, it's because I really wanted it to be this way, and it's wrong that it's not. And it's like, yeah, you're right. It is wrong. That's not fair. You should not. Your husband should not be that way. Your home should be this way. Your church should be this way.
But it's not
But it's
right.
not. Well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You got to accept it, and then you keep going. And that's what I feel like I've had to do. And I feel like God's always just like reminding me, like, no, you're going to have to just accept
Yes.
it, that you can't do anything about that situation.
Right. I
So,
agree. And like what you were saying, we have expectations of what our life is going to look like, and expectations of what our marriage will look like. And it's never that. Reality is so much different than what we imagine reality will be. So, yeah, accepting
yeah,
and continuing to do right. Yeah. Great
right.
truth. How did the role of faith help you overcome difficult situations?
I was thinking about that question a lot, because I was like, I don't really know what that means, but I'm a little weird to make it a little more simple, the questions. No, I'm just kidding. I was thinking like faith is not knowing, right? So I said, not knowing how things are going to
Yeah.
turn out. You remember last year, or the year before, last year? Yeah. Well, the year before, when, we thought there was some threats against our family and our safety. And then, we did actually, someone else was like, you mean when they blew up your van? I was like, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something else. I was like, but now I'm kind of thinking they were two in the same, but like not knowing the end, and you just have to focus on the eternal.
Yeah.
It's just like, I feel like the people who have had a death in their family or lost a child, that they maybe have a better eternal focus than I do, because they have to focus on that, or else how would they get
Right.
through their day? They've lost a spouse or a child, or even a child in the womb, and they seem to talk about heaven a lot more. They seem to have a better perspective on it, because they have to focus on what they can't
Yeah.
see. And I feel like in those times where I was like, I don't know if this is worth it. I don't know if this is worth it. I'm not sure if we should be doing
Yeah.
this. I'm not sure if this is what I would, my husband would, you would think, well, what's the worst that could happen? You end up in heaven?
Yeah.
That's not that bad of a thing. What's the worst thing? Your child could end up there faster. That's not a terrible thing. If you really believe what you say, it's not the worst thing. So like you said, to focus on eternal things.
Yeah.
And like you said, soul winning helps with that too, because you're focusing on eternal. So even if those people don't all come to church, you're remembering, well, but their soul is going somewhere
Right.
that I can't see.
Right. Yeah.
That's the
I
best
think that's brilliant. Yes.
I think that's not too general. I felt like I was too general in answer.
That's not too general at all. I think that is the perfect answer. This life is only temporal, and eternity is forever, and focusing on that. Yeah, that's what faith's about. Can you describe a time while on the field when you had to completely surrender an area of your life to God's perfect will?
I don't know. Again, could you help me with that question?
I think you've already answered it. You've surrendered your health. You've surrendered your children. You've surrendered your children's health. You've surrendered your community. You have to surround yourself with people who are not your culture. I think all of that is surrender.
Yeah, that's kind of what I had written down. Like you said, like accepting that things won't be certain ways. Like you said, I used to say all the time, it's because I don't have any friends.
Oh,
And now when I hear women tell me that, I'm like, I just kind of like look at them. I'm like, who does? I'm like, nobody does.
who could have friends when you have young children? Nobody has friends.
Right,
You're
exactly.
surviving.
Like you said, like I consider us a close friend. We haven't even spoken. Like we don't talk, but every relationship has a limit.
Yeah.
To me, it seems silly now, but I do remember feeling that a lot when we first got to
Sure.
Michigan. This is so silly. So to me, it sounds so pathetic. But I remember having to accept that we wouldn't have a home. Like we would never have a house. I mean, my parents still live where we were raised and born, and my dad grew up there. And so like us renting every year and moving was really hard on me. I just did not, it was just hard on me. And people constantly kick us out. And I just want to know where we're going to spend Christmas next year,
Yeah.
And he'd be like, of course, also my husband being raised in Missionary, he's like, I don't really understand why you care so much. Like just not relating to that. And so I remember started driving me around to look at houses and properties. And finally he was like, look, Kella, I'm going to be honest with you. We cannot buy any of these.
Yeah.
He's like, I can't. He's like, we don't have a Mexican bank account. And even if we did, they would never give us a loan because we don't have any money compared to what.
Sure.
He was like, no church, nobody in the States is going to give us a loan. Nobody here's, there's no way anyone's going to give us anything to buy a property. He said we'd have to pay in cash and no one's going to do that. And so I was like, totally blown away.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think I even said, but all my friends have houses. We were like 26. And he was like, Kella, I don't think that's true. And I was like, I just want a place that's ours. That's ours, And
Yeah.
and so I just remember, and my husband saying, well, you're going to have to get over that because that's not going to happen. And I remember just being like totally stunned by that. And I was praying and reading the Bible, where it says, if you've given up, whatever you've given up, I'm terrible also.
Houses
Apparently.
and family and land. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That he will give it back to you. And I said, well, Lord, I'm just going to let that be. I said, I've lived in my car for 2 years. I've moved around for 5 years. I'm just going to leave it. That's fine. Help me to be content with what we have. And then the very next few months, my husband started trying to get the property we're at now. And for the church. And and the man allowed us to make cash payments every month for the church sake. And then there were those three rooms upstairs with the bathroom. And immediately once the man agreed and they signed it, it's in my husband's name, my husband was like, well, we'll just live here because then we don't have to pay rent. And I was like, that's amazing. And it was the same thing, kind of like the missionary check. It was like a while later, I was like, whoa.
I took care of you.
Like, see,
I took care of you.
I gave you something. It's yours. See, you're fine. And I was like, oh my word, he's right. And then, and it was the same way. And we said we didn't push it. We just left it in the Lord's hands. And now we have a place that's ours and we've built everything that's here. And the kids, I would always pray for the kids to have an outside area to play because, I grew up in the woods. Really hard for me not to raise my kids in the woods. My husband will say they don't know what they're missing unless you tell them, Kella. And I'm like, that's true. So, and we had to have an outside area. Like you said, that was something that, that was the materialistic thing that was really hard for me. It wasn't that I needed a house. I just wanted something that was ours. I didn't care
stability,
how big it was.
Yeah. Security.
And I felt like, I was having a hard time with imagine how my kids would have a time with it. And so, and my husband tells me all the time, he's like, nobody should have this. Like, we should not have this building. This makes no sense. He said, I moved all my life until I was 16. It was the first time my parents owned a home, and he was like, so I'm very grateful for that. So I don't know if that counts.
Oh, it definitely counts, Kella. It definitely counts. What advice could you offer for those considering missionary work or looking to make a difference in the world?
If women, you mean obviously, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
No. Preach to the men, Kella.
Yeah. I would where did I in general? Yeah, because I got some things to say, but no, that's a different podcast. I'm just kidding. No. I would say, like you said, you have to make things work. Me and my, all my brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws, except for one, is not on the mission field or is going to mission field in some way. Ruth and John, they're in Alaska, so it's still the mission field in a sense. And we're not all the same. We don't do all the things the same, and our ministries aren't the same. And I learned that, I used to have a very specific opinion of what I thought serving the Lord faithfully on the mission field was. And like I said, obviously soul winning standards, you can have those on any mission field. I don't believe in changing that. But when I first came to the mission field, I felt a lot of pressure to be exactly like my mother-in-law, who was an amazing lady. And I would love to be compared to her. When someone told me once, they're like, but you're not her, honey. It's okay. Right. And that's what they thought. They're like, you're not her. You don't have to do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like she could do that. And then they said, God gives everybody grace for what they need for that day.
Yes.
God gave her what she had to have when she was in the 60s or 70s, the 80s in Mexico, and it's not the same.
Right.
And like I said, even though I admire her and I do try to live like her, because I admire her a lot, I had to understand that that's not my race. That's not my,
right.
Not my road. Pressures we put on ourselves to be like someone else because they're successful.
Mm-hmm. I
don't know if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah. Again, comparing ourselves among ourselves. It's
women. It's just we're like
Women.
we're just
It's
like
just
our
we're
natural.
women.
We just go that way.
Like you said, our race will be different than someone else's race, and that's okay. Difference okay, as long as you're not compromising on the word of God. that
Gotta add that in there. Or they're gonna sell this totally different. This podcast.
right. Do whatever you want. Live your
Yeah,
life.
express yourself.
Okay. Our podcast verse is Psalm 91:1. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. What verse has helped you abide in the secret place?
Like I said, I always return to my life verse. They said that was a thing in Bible college. Again, I had no idea what that meant, but I wanted one so bad because
Yeah.
everyone had one, and so I would just like read different ones all the time. And when I found this one, I really liked it. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end." And when someone explained that, that means like the end of your life, like God knows what is at the end. And since I came from, again, I felt like I came from so much rebellion and years of just shoving the Lord away and felt like I owed him. I mean, because we do owe him, but I felt like I really need to give him everything because I've messed up and he's been so gracious to me. That really encouraged me because I would think lots of times that I would say, "What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. You don't deserve to be here." There are girls who should be here, who should. I even told my husband many times while we were dating, "Well, thanks for everything, but you really shouldn't date a girl like me. You should date a girl that's like you, that plays the piano and has been like you, has never even seen a movie that's not black and white. I was like, you should do that. I know all the songs that are playing in the subway when we go out there for dates. Like I was like, you shouldn't marry a girl like me, but thanks for everything." And like the next day, he'd be right there again. And I'd be like, "What are you doing? I told you." And he would say, "What was it?" And I'm telling him everything I've ever done, and be like, "Well, so I guess this is goodbye." And he'd be like, "Why? I don't understand why you keep talking about it." He was like, "If you said you're sorry and you don't do it anymore, let's just go. I don't understand why you keep talking about it." Like he was annoyed with me, and I was like,
"Yeah, you didn't see your worth. He saw your worth."
Right. And so I felt like that verse was good for me because it was like God knew where you were, and He knows where you're gonna go. Not thinking so much about where you've been but because God knows where you're going. And if you can stay with him, like you said, that accepting his will and submitting, because acceptance and submission is kind of the same thing. I feel like you said you're submitting to God's will by saying, "Okay, this is it. I'm not going to keep saying, but I really want it this way. I'd really like it that way." I would love to not have those years of rebellion in my life and been what I thought was worthy of my husband. But then at the same time, I don't think I would, but I also don't think I'd be here then. Like that makes sense. It wouldn't be the same path. And so God knew where I would end up.
You're reminding me of Paul, the verse that says, "Forgetting those things which are behind, I press toward the mark," because Paul had quite a past. Right. I mean, killing Christians is kind of a big deal. I'm sure that haunted him.
Right.
But he couldn't think about it. He had to think about the going forward. And like you said, the expected end, the end of the story. Other than the Bible, what resource has been the most helpful to you in your Christian walk?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to listen to podcasts. I have tried. I don't know how to do that. I listen to yours when I get the link on Instagram, but other than that, I really don't know how to do it. But
so AKA the Help Me Abide podcast is your favorite resource that has helped you the most ever.
So far, especially today.
Especially today. This episode.
This episode's going to be really helpful to me. So I'm never going to listen to it because I hate hearing my voice.
Oh, I hate hearing my voice too.
If you watch my Sunday school, my hand, if you just put it on mute and just slide your finger, my hands are like,
oh my goodness.
I look like I'm signing.
Kella, for me, it's my laugh. Like every time I hear my laugh on recording, I'm like, I want to stab myself in the face.
Your laugh is great. It always makes me feel like I'm hilarious.
You are hilarious.
Because your laugh is like is great.
Genuinely make me laugh, Kella. These aren't fake laughs.
That is why we're friends.
Yes.
But like you said, I do read a lot of books. I read dozens, and I heard somewhere if you read more than 25 books or something, you're an expert, or is it 18 books?
Okay, Kella.
Like,
expert.
I know. I was like, where is my doctorates here? I do read a lot of books. I prefer to read the ones that are only King James version, but there aren't a lot of those resources. And I'm reading a book right now, which I really like, and I really want to teach it as a series or something similar to it. how to make your own standards and conviction, or how to build your own convictions. I think it's by a pastor called Cavaness.
Oh, I love Clint Cavaness. He has the best child rearing book.
I think I have one. Seeking Good Seed.
Goodly Seed, yes.
Goodly Seed.
Godly Seed,
I have
maybe
that
something.
one. Godly Seed. It's Godly Seed. Yeah.
That's the best child rearing book I've ever read.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got into it. Then I got to the marriage part and I was like, never mind. This doesn't apply to me. Like, no.
Pass.
Pass, yeah. But I do have it, and I've been reading it. And then I started reading this
Yeah.
Build Your Own Convictions thing.
Yeah.
And I thought this would be great this is good for older people. This is
Oh,
good
yeah.
for my children. And I think one of the quotes I recently read was that in it that I highlighted, because I'm always like,
Mhm.
highlighting everything in the book. It said, basically every decision you make is based on because who you want to please. And I was like, so I said that to my children a couple times, and it's kind of clicked in their brain. I'm like, well, you just have to decide. Do you want to make yourself happy? Are you trying to make, the kid in your class laugh? Or are you trying to make mom happy? Which is if you do what the teacher says, that makes mom happy.
Right.
And which makes Jesus happy. And I like it because it's solid. It's got King James. So that's the first book I read in a long time. Like, even marriage books can go against you.
Dangerous. Very dangerous.
As long as you're not okay. Yeah, exactly. And like you said, I don't know why that is.
I think marriage books, especially modern marriage books, I've read many. A lot of them were saying, if you do this, this, and this, then your husband will do this, this, and this. If they feel respected, then
Right.
they will love you. Okay, I'm doing everything that you said, and he is not doing anything that you said that he would do. So it made me frustrated,
Exactly.
in fact, to the point where it didn't help my marriage.
You're so the same, Jen. We're so the same. Well, I did that. I read all the marriage books before we got married. I think there were 18. We were married for 3 months, and I went
Yeah.
back and read all of them.
Yeah.
And took
This
notes
isn't
because I
working.
was like, this is not
Right.
what they said.
I think it all comes back to, it does not matter what my husband does. I have a choice to do right or wrong. So I am going to choose to love him, and I am going to choose to respect him regardless of if he chooses to love me or respect me. Because when I answer to God, I will have to answer for how I responded and how I treated him, not how he treated me. But that's one paragraph. So it won't sell a book. If you go back to the Bible, our job is to submit and obey. And American Christians, especially, I don't know how Mexican Christians are, they do not want to submit or obey. They don't want that as the answer. They want another answer. It's not easy. It's dying to yourself.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm good at it. I stink at life. I stink at being a wife.
There's a blessing in not being responsible for all the decisions,
Yes. I love being a woman. I love being a woman. There are parts that are not easy, but I agree. Brett's going to have to answer to God for our family. I'm glad I don't have to. I could just obey him, and
Right.
I'm good. And even if he makes the wrong choice, I obeyed. I did good. Thank you, Kella, so much for joining us on the podcast, the Help Me Abide podcast. You've been a blessing, and I just love talking to you. You make me laugh, and you also speak truth. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Miss Jen. Thank you for having me.
How can I say thanks for the things you have done for me? Things so undeserved that you gave to prove your love for me. The voices of a million angels could not express my gratitude. All that I am and ever hope to be, I owe it all to thee. To God be the glory, to God be the glory, to God be the glory for the things He has done. With His blood He has saved me. With Let it be pleasing, Lord, to thee. And should I gain any praise, let it go to Calvary. With his blood he has saved me. With his heart he has raised me. To God be the glory for the things he has done. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. With your blood you have saved me. With your power you have raised me. To God be the glory for the things you have done. How great thou art, how great thou art.
Thank you so much for listening to the Help Me Abide podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as we did. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to us on social media or through our podcast website, www.helpmeabide.com. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. The Help Me Abide podcast is a ministry of the Faith Baptist Church of Wildomar, California, pastored by Pastor Bruce Goddard. That being said, it's important to remember that this podcast is not a substitute for regular church attendance. We encourage all of our listeners to be faithful members of a local, independent, Bible-believing Baptist church. My heartfelt gratitude goes out to Mrs. Tammy Goddard, who facilitates the podcast, Lisa Grubb, who expertly directs our social media outreach, Connie Marujo, who tirelessly promotes our resources, and Lindsay Osgood, who provides the perfect musical accompaniment to the interviews. Without our amazing team, this podcast would not be possible. Also, big thanks to Faith Music Missions for allowing us to use their beautiful music on our podcast. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back soon with more inspiring content.